6:15, this is the Sri Lanka Broadcasting Corporation. The news edited by Catherine Pereira and read by Lavani Vijayatunga. First, we take a look at the headlines. The President orders officials to speed up Zion Church renovation. A special train service has been deployed until tomorrow for pilgrims to travel free from Anuradhapura to Mihintale. A program to create 100,000 entrepreneurs from the migrant workers has begun. Property tax will not burden the lower-income population, State Minister assures. Cases filed against 15,000 institutes which defaulted EPF remittances. In news overseas, Red Cross says 22 killed in strike near its Gaza office. Those are the headlines, and now let's move on to the details of the local news. President Ranil Wickremesinghe instructed officials to explain the hold-ups in the renovation of the Zion Church in Batticaloa, which was damaged due to the Easter Sunday bomb attacks. He made this observation when he visited the church today. The President ordered immediate assistance from the Sri Lanka Army to complete the repairs swiftly. Funding from the Presidential Secretariat will support this effort, according to the President's Media Division. Cabinet spokesman and Mass Media Minister Dr. Bandula Gunawardena said that a special train service has been deployed until tomorrow for the pilgrims to travel free from Anuradhapura to Mihintale. He was speaking at the weekly Cabinet media briefing held recently at the Government Information Department. He said that he hopes to provide the same service if the sponsors come forward on other days as well. In addition, the minister said that a special bus service has been deployed from Anuradhapura to Sri Mahabodhiya and more than 400 buses have been deployed to travel to Anuradhapura and Mihintale. The newly built railway line from Anuradhapura to Mihintale is about 2 kilometers long. The railway line at Mihintale, which commenced during late President Premadasa's era, was completely abandoned, and measures are underway to renovate and commence the service from Anuradhapura to Mihintale. The Dharma Rashmi Homagama Pozon annually held to coincide with the Pozon Poya will be held until tomorrow. Today is the second day of the Pozon Zone. Dharma Rashmi Pozon Zone was inaugurated under the patronage of Prime Minister Dinesh Gunawardena at the invitation of Minister Bandula Gunawardena on Pozon Poya Day yesterday. This time the Dharma Rashmi Pozon Zone spans 13 kilometers covering Diyagama, Pitipana, Dampe, Meegoda, Godagama, Panagoda and Homagama. A program to create 100,000 entrepreneurs from the migrant workers has begun. Minister Manusha Nanayakara said that this program will be implemented until the 7th of next month. This program will be implemented with the participation of the migrants who have arrived in the island to be with their family members. He made these remarks at the Jayagamu Sri Lanka program held in Ampara. Several programs have been implemented for the welfare of the families of the migrant workers. This is the news from the Sri Lanka Broadcasting Corporation. And we continue with more local news. State Minister of Finance Ranjit Siambalapidi emphasizes that the proposed imputed rental income tax will only be implemented after the first quarter of the year 2025. Speaking to the media, the State Minister said that 90% of the country's population will benefit through this tax. This is not a tax that will be implemented this year. It is expected to be introduced after the first quarter of 2025. The wealthiest segment of our society, which is about 10% of the population, will be subjected to this tax. 90% of the population will benefit through this tax, Mr. Siambalapidi claimed. It has been revealed at the government's COPA meeting that cases have been filed against 15,000 institutes which have defaulted EPF remittances. It has also been revealed that more than 5,000 cases were not active as of 31st December 2021. This is due to the non-availability of the addresses of the relevant institutes and the migration of the board of directors. The committee has advised the Labour Department to submit a report in this regard soon. And to conclude the local news, the headlines once again. The President orders officials to speed up Zion Church renovation. A special train service has been deployed until tomorrow for pilgrims to travel free from Anuradhapura to Mihintale. A program to create 100,000 entrepreneurs from the migrant workers. Property tax will not burden the low-income population, State Minister assures. Cases filed against 15,000 institutes which defaulted EPF remittances. And that was the local news.
The main news story is brought to you by Sinhala Veda Mahatmya.
The main news story for this evening: President Ranil Wickremesinghe has symbolically distributed freehold deeds to 192 individuals from 13 division secretariat divisions in the Batticaloa district out of the 27,595 qualified families under the Urumaya Freehold Deeds Program. The Urumaya National Program is expected to grant 2 million freehold land deeds to people across the island. And that was the main news story.
The main news story was brought to you by Sinhala Vedamahatmya.
In Washington this evening, the Department for Registration of Persons has announced an extension for individuals over the age of 40 who have been unable to obtain national identity cards due to issues with their birth certificates. Commissioner General of the Department, Pradeep Saputantri, stated that the deadline for these applications has been extended until the 30th of June. Initially, the deadline was the 31st of March 2024. This extension was granted in response to the request from the division secretaries, according to the department. And that came to you in Watchlight.
The main news story was brought to you by Sinhala Vedamahatmya.
Coming up, World News.
Headlines of the World News. Red Cross says 22 killed in strike near its Gaza office. UK's richest family convicted of exploiting servants. Balkans hit by blackouts as heat wave persists. Those are the headlines, and now let's move on to the details of the World News. The International Committee of the Red Cross says its officers in Gaza have been damaged by shelling, which killed 22 people who had sought shelter around its compound. Heavy-caliber projectiles landed within meters of the office and the residences of the International Committee of the Red Cross on last afternoon, an ICRC statement said. It added that all parties had an obligation to take precautions to avoid harm to civilians and humanitarian facilities. An Israel Defense Forces spokesman told the BBC that initial inquiries suggested that there was no indication that it had carried out the strike in the area, but added that the incident was under review. 4 members of the UK's richest family received prison sentences for exploiting staff brought over from India to work in their Geneva villa. Prakash and Kamal Hinduja, as well as their son Ajay and his wife Narmada, were found guilty of exploitation and illegal employment by a Swiss court and had sentences ranging from 4 to 4.5 years. They were acquitted on more serious charges of human trafficking. Lawyers representing the defendants said that they intend to appeal against the ruling. Speaking outside the court, Robert Arsell, the lawyer for the defendants, said, "I am shocked. We are going to fight it to the bitter end." 4 Balkan countries suffered simultaneous power cuts lasting several hours yesterday as the region sweltered in summer heatwave. Albania, Bosnia, Montenegro and large areas of the Croatian coast were hit by the afternoon blackouts brought on by surging demand for power after households switched on their air conditioning to combat the high temperatures. In Bosnia and Croatia, traffic lights were knocked out, causing transport chaos in Sarajevo, Split and other big cities. Suppliers said that they had largely restored power by the evening, but were still trying to identify where the failure has occurred in the 4 countries' interlinked power systems. And that was the World News.
Development News.
President Ranil Wickremesinghe has inaugurated the new district secretariat in Thiraimadu, Batticaloa this morning. The new district secretariat building was built at a cost of 1.05 billion rupees. And that came to you in the segment of Development News.
Moving on with Sports News.
The T20 match between the visiting Windies women's team and Sri Lankan women's team will be played at the Hambantota Suryavava International Stadium on Monday. 3 T20 matches are to be played between the two nations. That was the sports news. Business news coming up.
Go ekak thiyana youth eකට life එකේ change එකට නියමෙට set වෙන්න as වහගෙන දැකපු ගීන හැබැ කරන්න youth එකට නියමෙට set වෙන friendship එක මෙන්න
The all new
all-new NSB Ithru account. NSB IM, a plan for your dream.
Business News, sponsored by National Savings Bank, the safest place for your money.
In a bid to rejuvenate the Sri Lankan film industry whilst positioning the country as a major tourist hub in South Asia, the government has decided to host the Colombo International Film Festival. Organised under the sponsorship of the National Film Corporation and the Sri Lanka Tourism Development Authority, the film festival is set to take place from the 8th to the 14th of July in Colombo. That was the business news. Economic news follows.
Business News, sponsored by National Savings Bank, the safest place for your money.
Go ekak tiyana youth eකට life එකේ change එකට නියමෙට set වෙන්න ඇස් වහගෙන දැකපු හින හැබැයි කරන්න youth එකට නියමෙට set වෙන්න friendship එක මෙන්න.
The all-new NSB Ithru account. NSB IM, a plan for your dream.
In economic news, Sri Lanka and the Kingdom of Saudi Arabia will enter into a memorandum of understanding aimed at attracting direct investments and enhancing the investment environment in both countries. The agreement seeks to promote policy and legal reforms, provide advanced and integrated infrastructure facilities, and streamline processes to foster a more investor-friendly climate. That was the economic news and the weather report to conclude.
Weather report.
And finally, the weather report. The Department of Meteorology has issued an amber advisory for strong winds and rough seas for the sea areas off the coast extending from Mannar to Chilao via Puttalam and from Hambantota to Pothuwil. The advisory is in effect for the period until 6 a.m. on Sunday. Accordingly, the Met Department warned the sea areas off the coast extending from Mannar to Chilao via Puttalam and from Hambantota to Pothuwil to be very rough at times with strong gusty winds up to 65 kilometers per hour. The sea areas off the coast extending from Shillong to Hambantota via Colombo and Galle and from Trincomalee to Mannar via Mullaitivu and Kankesanture will be rough at times with strong gusty winds up to 55 kilometers per hour, it added. And before we conclude this bulletin, let's get back to the headlines once again. The President orders officials to speed up the Zion Church renovation. A special train service will be deployed until tomorrow for the pilgrims to travel free from Anuradhapura to Mihintale, a program to create 100,000 entrepreneurs from the migrant workers. Property tax will not burden the low-income population, State Minister assures. Cases filed against 15,000 institutes which defaulted EPF remittances. In news overseas, Red Cross says 22 killed in strike near its Gaza office. And with that, we conclude this bulletin of news. Now it's back to your regular Saturday evening host, my good friend Chandima, on the other side of the glass panel to keep you entertained.
Thank you very much, Lavani. That was Lavani Vijayatunga bringing you the evening bulletin of news. You are tuned to Radio Sri Lanka.